Okay, welcome everybody. Sorry for the slight delay in getting started. We're streaming this over WebEx so folks at the NTRC and across the campus can follow along on their computer and conference rooms. So welcome all of you on this sunny afternoon. I'm Melissa Lapsa and I'm on the lead team for our ORNL Sustainable Campus Initiative, and this is part of our seminar series that we offer here at the lab. For those of you who have been here before or haven't been here before, I wanted to give you a quick overview of what our Sustainable Campus Initiative is all about. Our initiative was created in 2008, so it's been going on for about 4 years, and it embodies ORNL's efforts to achieve enduring sustainability in our facilities, our operations, and organizational culture. The initiative includes our buildings, landscaping, energy management efforts, and taps ORNL's world-class science and technology expertise. We feature 26 roadmaps to achieve our sustainability goals, one of which is our sustainable employee transportation. And you can get more information about the Sustainable Campus Initiative on our website, which is on the URL was on the giveaway that you got as you walked in this morning. And you can also find it from the ORNL homepage. If you click on S and go down to sustainability, you can find our Sustainable Campus Initiative website. So all of our information is there. And the purpose of this seminar series is another way to showcase what we're doing across the campus to promote sustainability at ORNL. Our speaker today is Diane Davidson, and she is the director of the ORNL Center for Transportation Analysis at the NTRC. Diane will discuss ORNL's new telework program, one of the lab's ongoing efforts to promote sustainable employee transportation. Telework is an innovative workplace strategy and sustainable business practice that can reduce ORNL's carbon footprint. Diane's seminar will describe the potential benefits of telework and explain ORNL's telework principles and procedures. Diane has 30 years of experience in executive leadership and transportation management, planning, and operations. She has conducted research on telework programs at major corporations, developed telework training materials for Middle Tennessee businesses, and served as chair of the Tennessee Telework Council. Please join me in welcoming Diane Davidson.
Well, thanks so much. It's great to see so many people come out. And I imagine some of you are here because you would like to telework. Others are here because you are managers and you think you may have some teleworkers in your future and you want to know more about that. And then I see other faces who I think are here because you just are so supportive of the Sustainable Campus Initiative. So all those reasons are great to be here, and I hope we have a little content that addresses everyone's interest. So we're going to talk about making it work, telework at ORNL today. A little bit about the background. I had a nonprofit that I started, founded in Middle Tennessee, and I worked with what was then the Tennessee Energy Office and developed some continuity of operations planning for them, and part of that was telework. And then through that, began to work with some major corporations, Nortel, Service Merchandise, which that shows you how long ago it was. It does not exist, but did some research and looked into it. It wasn't my main objective in the work I did, but I became very interested in it and have been very glad to be able to kind of dust it off and bring it out and hopefully share some things for ORNL. So today we're going to talk about the why of telework, the ORNL business practices and procedures, and I do want to recognize that this effort is not solely Sustainable Campus. There are many different divisions within ORNL that are making this possible, including Human Resources, of course, and ITSD. And I think as we go along, there'll be many others to be involved. So I just happen to be a spokesperson to begin to promote this and get it up to where more people are aware that it's available for them. And then the last part of this segment, we'll talk about some tips for success, and I'm very pleased to have Megan Scott with HR here, and also Bruce Wilson with ITSD. And we hope to have some time for some Q&A, and we'll all respond to that. So thank you both for being here. I don't know how many times this is going to show. Okay. So, welcome to the new world of telework. How many people here have already been teleworking at any point in time? Yeah, and probably more of you than you realize in terms of informal telework. So telework merely means work that's performed at an employee's home or other work location other than a traditional office. And this has gained very widespread attention and support over the past decade for a variety of reasons that we'll talk about later that are benefits to the organization, to the employees, and to society as a whole. All this has been enabled by this tremendous leap in technology and telecommunications. And if any location is ripe for this, it's ORNL, because we have the ultimate in telecommunications and information technology. So we should be able to do this. So it's simply moving the work to the worker. To put it simply. Work is what you do, it's not where you go. And that's kind of a paradigm mind shift for a lot of people. We like it because we consider it a commute option. It eliminates an entire trip. It eliminates all the vehicle miles of travel associated with a trip and the consequent greenhouse gas emissions that VMT is generating. And this slide is to kind of continue with that point. Light-duty vehicles, as end users, account for about 58% of the 29% that the transportation sector contributes to greenhouse gases. So we do have to get a handle on it. And there's many ways to reduce transportation-related greenhouse gas emissions. System management, changing fuels. We work on a lot of these things here. But what we're talking about today with telework is travel activity and travel behavior. And in many ways, that's the most difficult measurement and strategy to work on. So in addition to transportation demand management, transit-oriented development, bus rapid transit, light rail, there are ways to work, and telework and alternate work hours fall into that category. It's very difficult to get your hands today on how many Americans are really teleworking. The Gartner DataQuest report showed that 25% of workers were telecommuting in 2007, and that in 2009 that went up to 29.5%. But a regular publication by World at Work in 2011 showed the number at 26.2 million, which was down 20% from the previous year, which was 33.7 million. I think some of that's due to some of the things happening in the economy and also people maybe being a little more reluctant not to be present 100% of the time at their workplace when there's a change and flux going on. So let's get into why major corporations are embracing this. And the federal government has also embraced it, and many state governments have. So some of the organizational benefits are space utilization. Sometimes two people can share an office. You can reduce your entire space utilization as people move, and if they're working at home, 100%. It improves productivity. It shows corporate citizenship and leadership in the community. Often through the process of teleworking, your workforce becomes more tech savvy. Management becomes focused on task and becomes more results oriented. It creates an environment that's conducive to scientific research, and it helps in attracting qualified, talented, and might I say, younger staff, because this is the way they grew up and this is the way they want to work today. It reduces absenteeism and sick leave, and it really becomes a driving force for better communication between managers and employees. So the quote on this slide, 10 years ago it was seen as more of an employee benefit. Today, businesses around the world are seeing telework as a necessity, and that's one of the CEOs from Microsoft saying that. Yes?
You put back the previous slide. Your comment up there creates an environment that is most conducive to scientific research. Sometime during this talk, can you build on that? Because the most common reason that I have heard against teleworking is that because we are a research lab, we need to interact with each other.
I do have some statements about that later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
And we'll address that in the Q&A.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So why would an individual want to do this? The gentleman just cited some reasons that you might not want to, but why would you want to? It can improve work-life balance, and in today's very stressful world, that's an important thing. If you have a long and stressful commute, you can reduce that kind of stress. There have been studies in Southern California particularly that show how blood pressure goes up during the actual commute because driving is just so difficult. You reduce commute time, and to a lot of people, commute time is more important than the money they save on the gasoline. It can improve personal safety. I'm not exactly sure but I guess that means walking to your car and the exposure out on the roadway to vehicle crashes. And it can improve your own flexibility. For the community benefits, people are in the community more. They can interact with homeowners associations and scout troops and so on and so forth. And then it has the societal benefits of reducing traffic congestion, improving air quality, conserving energy, and then building those bonds with the community. A couple of quick case studies. As I said, the federal government in 2010 passed a federal telework law, which mandates that all federal agencies engage in telework programs, and they're beginning to track their progress very carefully. So one of the success poster examples is from the Patent and Trademark Office. And it's been considered a model for some time because they actually started with an early pilot. So 79% of their employees are eligible to work from home at least one day a week out of a total workforce of a little over 8,000. In 2011, 6,500 PTO employees teleworked at least one day a week. Over 3,400 worked at home between 4 and 5 days a week, and 3,100 teleworked 1 to 3 days per week. And the results of that, the ones who worked 4 to 5 days a week reduced emissions by 20,000 tons of CO emissions in a year, and the teleworkers who were working between 1 day a week collectively reduced emissions by 4,100 tons per year. So that gives you kind of a frame of reference as to the impact this can make on accomplishing objectives in that respect. Some of the other case studies kind of highlight different aspects of telework, and one is the innovative technology used to support telework. The U.S. General Service Administration, GSA, Office of Chief Information Office, has established an initiative called A3, Any Device, Anywhere, Anytime strategy. And this is to improve its organizational mobility and enable them to migrate to mobile information technology solutions to free employees to telework by replacing their desktop computers with laptops, portable devices, smartphones, tablets. They have saved an initial $400,000 by implementing this strategy. And this strategy sounds a little familiar to one that I've just recently heard about called Genesis. So I think that there's some lessons to be learned from GSA, and possibly we have some we can share back with them. And the other aspect is executive leadership. It makes all the difference to have top-level support. The U.S. Department of Agriculture telework program is part of the Secretary's commitment to cultural transformation across the entire USDA department, and it's become a focal point for recruitment and retention of top talent. So the number of USDA employees who are eligible to participate in telework now stands at almost 3/4 of their entire workforce, and that's up from just 15% who were eligible in 2010. So part of the message there is we're just getting started, and our numbers are small right now, but I think with leadership, with technology, with education, we can easily meet these kinds of goals and rise to the level that these federal partners have been able to do. The USDOT, my group works closely with them, and we know they telework 1 day a week. They use SharePoint, sound familiar, and video conferencing tools to collaborate and stay in touch. Most of them work 1 to 2 days a week, and senior leadership is very involved in shaping this initiative. You wouldn't normally think that Department of Homeland Security would be teleworking, but Custom and Border Protection Program has experienced more than a 2,000% increase in telework participation. And they have now 3,200 eligible employees participating in the program, up from only an initial 134. So again, once you have that will to do it, it kind of falls into place. So why are we doing it? Well, because of those organizational benefits that we just touched on, we need to do that. We want that. And then in addition, the ORNL 2010 Commute Survey and Recommendations Report actually recommended that ORNL implement an aggressive strategy of telework to reduce single-occupant gasoline vehicles on campus, because we need to address Scope 3 greenhouse gas reduction requirements that are in the White House Executive Order 13514. So our entire commute budget for 2010 was 8,500 metric tons. So the takeaway is sometimes the smartest commute is no commute at all. And it tries to illustrate that. This is an interstate. It's jammed with cars. It's at gridlock. Those are drive-alone vehicles. The next panel are people who are carpooling, and you see how it reduces, it frees up capacity by those carpools. The third are people who are riding in transit, and obviously additional capacity is made possible. But the fourth panel is telework. No vehicles. If 100% of those people begin to work at home, which of course is a stretch, but this is just to illustrate a point, you understand, then that's the road less traveled. So we were mandated to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, and I think that Melissa already touched on some of this. We actually produced a report. We had several recommendations in it, as I said, and we conducted a survey to better understand current commute preferences, commute patterns. What are people doing now? How are they getting to work now? How would they get to work in the future? When are they going to buy a new car? Will it be a hybrid vehicle? What do they think about electric cars? We ask a lot of different questions. 2,400 staff responded to that for a 30% response rate. At the time of that study, 90% drove alone to work, and I imagine they still do, and that's very high. That's higher than the national average. That's higher than the regional average. So in terms of telework specifically, there was some good news in there. Almost a quarter of the employees indicated that they would use, that they want to telework in the future. 16% said they might telework, and only 11% said they absolutely would not want to telework. So this indicates that some aggressive marketing, having a formal policy, and training could result in a very deep market penetration. And part of that is to address the barriers that have been identified, the reasons why people feel like telework might not fit them. Most people said they wanted to telework only 1 to 3 days a week. So if only those people, the 1,019 people who said they would do it for 1 day a week, at an average round-trip vehicle miles of travel of 36 miles, did so, that would reduce 36,760 miles of travel a week, or 1.9 million miles of travel a year. So right there, you see that sums it all up as to why this is an important initiative. Now, there were some barriers identified in the survey, and that there was perceived lack of supervisor permission and support, that there was a concern about having proper equipment and high-speed connections at home. There was a concern over loss of face time with peers and superiors, and that could jeopardize or impact careers. And then there was the concern over needing to be in the lab environment, to be close to work, and that teleworking could prohibit them from some of their more important activities. So those are all valid, and they're reasonable, and some of them can be addressed with policy, some with training, some by only teleworking a day and not 5 days. Almost everyone does something where they have to do paperwork, phone calls, and things that can be batched together and could be performed somewhere not in their traditional office. So we, as a result of this survey, recommended that we move ahead with telework, that we emphasize moving people, not vehicles, and we emphasize providing choice. Develop a pilot telework program, and Debbie Stairs did that, and it was a successful experience. Then use the lessons learned from that pilot to fine-tune the adoption of a formal telework policy. Develop those policies in SBMS, roll out a company-wide telework program, and then collect performance metrics over time and refine the program. So right now we're about at the point of rolling out the program. And once there's some critical mass of people who have requested to participate, and we can conduct some surveys and some focus groups, we'll collect that information about how it's going, and then we'll keep improving. So now I'm going to quickly run through some of the aspects of the SBMS policy, because that's really the important thing, that we understand it, and that hopefully people will make a decision to request to participate. So it covers all the procedures necessary and the criteria to telework. It's defined as temporary or long-term work arrangements that allow staff to work from home in the Oak Ridge, Knoxville metropolitan area during the regularly scheduled work hours. It's in the part of SBMS called alternate work location subject area. And all the different variety of alternate work location arrangements are now together in one place in SBMS. It applies to all ORNL salaried employees, but not to bargaining unit employees. And this will be put on the Sustainable Campus site, and on here you see the URL to get to this SBMS policy. So you can go to and look at it. Here it is in a very tiny type that you probably can't read much, but covers workspace, equipment, staff availability, and now I'm going to actually go through some of those. Eligibility. It will not be an employee right, but it will be a privilege. So it's open to all salaried employee regardless of your line of work, but you must meet certain criteria. Participation is voluntary. There has to be a written agreement. It will be renewed annually. And there's some threshold qualifications. You have to have been with the lab at least 12 months, and your most recent performance rating will have to at least meet expectations as fully contributing. The process is very simple. There's ORNL Form 591. It's online, and that's to be used for application. It requires that a supervisor review with their HRM the approval or denial to telework. The staff member's alternate workspace location has to be in the state of Tennessee, and they have to be available to report in if there's a need to be in the office. ORNL will not be reimbursing any costs of mileage associated with travel between that alternative workspace and the facility at ORNL. And more on the workspace, you must have a designated workspace that's free from distractions. Staff must furnish at their own expense this workspace. Any tax implications related to the use of the alternate work location are the employee's responsibility, and you are still responsible for the same safety and security requirements and expectations as you are at the lab, so that you still work in a safe and very professional manner. In terms of equipment, the decision on whether to furnish equipment and office supplies will be made on a case-by-case basis based on such considerations as the nature of the work. ORNL will be responsible for maintaining and repairing such equipment if it's been made available to the employee. Government-owned computers and telecommunication equipment, including software, can be placed in your alternate work location, but you still have to fill out an EPROP entry, and if you bring it back, you have to, revise it again. So essentially, none of this is too dramatic. It's like still just abiding by the same care that we exercise when we're here at the main campus. So this is the process that will be used. An employee who's interested in doing this should review the criteria, should learn a little bit about what telework is, whether it might fit them, and I have a little bit on that later. And then they request an alternate work location. They need to make sure they understand the business rules associated with it, and the manager needs to make sure they understand the business rules that are associated with telework. So then together the manager and the HRM review the arrangement with the employee. The manager then establishes his or her work expectations and schedule with the employee, and they sign the agreement, which is forwarded up to the level 2 manager, and then it goes forward, gets final approval, and then you telework. So when after this is approved, there's certain things that can make you or break you or make it more successful. And so I call it the three-legged stool of success. One, appropriate job tasks have to be selected and involved. Two, the manager is critical. And in many surveys, middle managers in particular are often resistant to telework. They say, how will I know if they're working? And the kind of trite but true answer is, Well, how do you know they're working now? So characteristics of a good manager are having good planning skills themselves, someone who manages output, not simply time, someone who can provide clear objectives, who monitors this off-site work activity, and who provides timely and constructive feedback. And that kind of gets wrapped up in the word trust. You have to trust your employees to do the right thing, but give them the tools to do the right thing. The employees need to be self-motivated, very responsible, independently productive, understand the organizational relationships and objectives, and have an appropriate work environment. So a couple of tasks that do jobs that fit teleworking. Again, this reads like we took it, I did not take it out of anything from ORNL, but it really reads like the kind of job list, job responsibilities we would have in a lot of our taskings. Project-oriented work, computer programming, auditing, planning, scheduling, data processing, reviewing proposals, etc. So those fit telework. What doesn't fit are tasks that are very, very difficult to measure, tasks that involve access to materials or information that cannot be moved, that cannot be removed from the lab space, tasks that might require special in-house equipment, and that pertains to specialized lab equipment that cannot be moved out of its space, and situations where extensive face-to-face interaction is required on a regular basis. So this kind of just covers that same ground. How do you win? You have good telemanagers and good teleworkers, and good supervisory skills, people who know how to delegate work, who have confidence in their telecommuter, that a telemanager who themselves have a positive attitude towards teleworking, can manage by results, and who are flexible and open to new ways to work. On the other hand, a good teleworker has a high degree of skill, knowledge, and maturity, is productive at their work location, is self-motivated, can problem solve before asking for help, and who will make a high level of effort to continue to communicate well with their manager as well as their coworkers. So what causes us to fail? Well, for a telemanager, it's not trusting, ignoring the teleworker, setting unrealistic deadlines, neglecting problems when they start to percolate to the surface, supervising too closely, just not taking it seriously. And everybody has to have a Dilbert cartoon, so I found one to put in here. I'll let you read it. The quote that I think is very pertinent, though, is management is doing things right, leadership is doing the right things, as Peter Drucker said. So ORNL has decided that telework is right for this organization, and as managers, your job is to make sure that it's done right. I won't go into a lot of the detail, but this is something that's going to be of concern to people, performance evaluations. So there's some feedback on how to go about that, how to address that. Essentially, everyone needs to be evaluated using the same criteria. Expectations should be the same. But managers might want to check in with their teleworkers more frequently, particularly when they first begin to telework, so they can identify and address any problems that might come up. And there you see a list of potential issues or areas that you might want to discuss with a teleworker. So kind of in summary, some of the tips. Know the policy, know the procedures, participate in training. We've pulled out some training that's offered by the Office of Personnel Management that's used by the federal government, and we have a draft version, beta version of a website, and that information is going to be on the site, so you can go to that and access it for additional training. Second, select the right employees, be the right employee. And I think we've already gone over a lot of those issues about how you do that and who's right for it. If you deny an application to telework and you're a manager, make sure that you base it on a business decision for doing so and explain to that employee why their application was denied and what would have to change for it to be approved in the future. It's very important that the team be maintained. We work in teams, we work at matrixed organizations, so coordinating staff meetings, making sure that teleworkers come in for meetings when they need to, keeping the team close, not letting the teleworkers begin to feel isolated or the team members feel like they're not getting what they need is very important. And communication is really the medium that you use to make sure that you're maintaining the team. And using all these technology tools that we have and we'll possibly get even more tools at our disposal. So these are pretty simple tips. Telework is not that difficult. I think part of the heavy lifting was Debbie Stairs in just getting the policy, thinking it through, what's right for ORNL, how do we go about it. And now it's really up to us to test drive it, see how it works. So I was going to try to go to a video. Did we decide we were going to wait? I think so. Yeah, I guess we're going to wait. So here's some questions and answers to get us started, and I'd like for our guests to come up. Bruce, Megan, I know that there are probably a lot of questions or comments that may have been generated by these remarks. I'll leave these questions up just in the event that you don't have any, but I can't imagine that that would be the case. So if you would just raise your hands and if you feel like identifying yourself, that would be helpful, but if not, it's not critical.
So the question for the folks on the phone was, the lady lives about 75 miles away, and would that preclude her? And my understanding from Megan's answer is no, that would be available for that. My perspective is this is to distinguish telecommuting from hire in place, and those are two different categories of issues. I had a gentleman who worked for me who lived in Atlanta. That's a hire in place, that's not a telecommute.
Yes, and your manager would have to be comfortable with that. Little last statement, I guess.
Can you tell us a little more about the pilot program at ORNL, how many people participated and what the results might have been and what lessons we might have learned that we're going to apply now that we're going into the more formal program?
Sure. I'll have to dust off my brain here. The pilot program was in 2010, 2009. We wanted to keep it really small because we weren't really sure where it was going to take us at the time. So there were 12 participants or so, and the intent of it was, the concern at the time was it was a space issue, really, was what was driving some of that. So we wanted people to be 100% telecommuting. With the arrangement as it is now, you could do 1, 2, 3 days a week, but for that pilot program, it was full-time. ran for about 6 months. I believe we have people that did the pilot that have continued. Some of them have, I think, retired since we did the pilot. But really, the pilot program is what we use to draft the SBMS with the forms and the procedure and that kind of thing. But we kept it really small. We worked through the HR managers, talking with managers that they supported, kind of looking for volunteers, but it wasn't really widespread just because we wanted to make sure it was effective in a small pilot.
I don't know.
I have a question. What about the office space at the lab? What would happen, or what has happened during the process? Would people therefore lose their office space, or reduce their office space size or footprint, or what do you anticipate?
During the pilot program, we did not take people's offices away from them because we wanted that they could come off of the program if it didn't work for them. I would imagine that if someone, were to be approved for this and telecommuted 100%, that their office would be given up. You may be able to speak to the hoteling that we have, but it's really up to the organization what they want to do with that office. They could keep it, they could get rid of it. It's kind of between them.
Not necessarily that we would do this, but in other organizations, almost like a job sharing, but an office sharing situation can result where if one individual is working at home 3 days a week and another 2 days, they can share the same office space. There are many places that very successfully use concept of satellite offices, satellite work offices, and at one point there were 7 satellite offices around DC, so that it was teleworking, but they captured the commuters before they actually got in beyond the Beltway where all the congestion began. So there are a lot of different ways you can approach this, because remember, you're also trying to solve and improve organizational issues. So if the need for space reduction is an issue, you might come at your telework policies in a different way.
And then I think from an IT perspective, I think the real driver on the space is really going to be what's the organizational's need. But from an IT perspective, we're trying to make it easier for people to be able to come in, and maybe they've got a thin client which is shared between multiple people, so you didn't have to bring your computer all the way back, putting some of the files up into the network, what we've called network-centric computing. Again, make it much easier to access that information in a less location-dependent function so that the organizations have the freedom to do what's right for that particular set of people.
When you sign up for a telecommuting, I haven't read the procedures, and you want to do something like 1 to 3 days, do you have to specify a specific day, or can it be based on like your meeting schedule? You've got several projects you're working on, and I've got, I'll wake up this week and I've got meetings on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and Friday. I don't have anything on Tuesday, so I call my boss and I say, I'm telecommuting on Tuesday. Does it work like that?
I think that's the conversation that you have on the front end, and just find out what your manager feels comfortable with. If they're okay with that, then the policy would allow for that. It's not going to force you to say it's going to be on Monday every single day. And now your manager, though, they may want it to be every Monday, and you just have to. That's part of the discussion at the beginning.
But there's nothing to prohibit that kind of interaction.
Not unless the manager has some sort of business reason.
One thing I found from going back and reviewing some of these case studies and what's happening at some of the federal agencies, because as a DOE has to abide by the 2010 Telework Act, so I think that's beneficial for us to kind of follow some of the same type of procedures that they do. But I've found mentioned often that of the eligible teleworkers, and they sign up for a number amount of of days a week, but they don't often telework that much. So I do think life intervenes, and at times there are strategic work initiatives that would prevent you from teleworking. And I mean, the important thing is that the work gets done and the best way possible.
First of all, thanks for working on this. This is a really neat and creative opportunity for us. I think about my job, and there's a lot of stuff that I need to be here, but there's also executive orders I need to read, reports I need to do, budget documents I need to develop and turn into Teresa that could be done at home without me having to drive here. I don't drive 75 miles. I drive 32, so, it's going to be a good savings. How can we capture the amount of carbon we are not emitting? Speaking as a person who works on that report that we do, is there a way to log it in PALS that says on Tuesday I did not drive 64 miles. Every Friday I do not drive 64 miles. And then on the way to work I pass 2 bicyclists, and there's a guy in my building that rides his bike. Could he put somewhere on PALS that today he came to work but did not drive his car?
There's a website called Knoxville Smart Trips or Smart Trips Knoxville where you can log exactly that sort of thing. They have a telework option, a bicycling option, carpooling, whatever way you do your commute. If it's not a single driver car, you can log it, and they give away gift cards at the end of the quarter to incentivize people to be greener about the way they get to work.
Well, yeah, thank you very much for mentioning Smart Trips. They've been a really dynamic partner with us, and I just saw Ed Bodie just left, but he works very closely with them. They do have a rideshare match site and a mechanism for logging in your travel, and then Ed and I receive monthly or quarterly printouts of the VMT avoided and greenhouse gas eliminated. The thing about that, and we really appreciate that, but not everyone is going to want to do that. And so I think what Teresa has been working on, and some others, is an internal mechanism for capturing it. And I'm not sure we're far enough along to have an answer yet.
I had a question also. In your presentation, you talked about an executive order that mandated a 13% reduction, and then you talked about how the people who had said they might do it would reduce by 1.9 million miles a year. What percentage of the total would that 1.9 million be? So we could compare to the 13% reduction mandated by the executive order.
Well, first let's answer your last question. Let's let Teresa answer the tracking question first before we lose that, and because we're about out of time.
We didn't want everybody to have to go to 2 or 3 different sites, so we're working with payroll to have a code in PALS that would show, like, on a certain day you teleworked and charged to that. And so we're working on that, tracking it that way, so make it easier. So that's still in the works.
Okay, are there any other questions?
Again, I appreciate what you, the presentation yourself. My name is Darrell Green. I work for the Department of Energy in Oak Ridge. And there's a comment, I guess, to pass back to the lab. Last week, Department of Energy in Oak Ridge Federal Building had to shut down. And we are being forced to telework. And at DOE headquarters, that's pretty much a norm. They're teleworking. So if the lab, the question, and we have continuity of operations. If the lab, if something happens unexpected, can the lab function? And we've been forced to answer those questions. So you can pass that on to them. If can the lab function? We do think telework is an appropriate thing. Right now, the Department of Energy is Oak Ridge is actually utilizing that for a lot of the workers right now. But that's very important. I guess the lab doesn't see it as a necessity yet, and that's important.
Well, during winter months, I think, there's seasonal reasons to do it, but maybe we can stay in touch and you can give us your lessons learned as you labor through this. And thank you so much, those of you who've said you appreciated this. I do believe that in these times when sometimes it feels like some of things are becoming restricted, that telework is a way that adds back to your pocketbook. You reduce your commute costs. You're able to work in a way that's more productive for you. So I think it's a very positive, a very great thing that the lab is making possible for you. But before we close, we've got about 3 minutes. I thought it would be helpful for us to hear a little more about IT's perspective on this and what they're doing.
So there was some of this that was driven by some of the planning a couple of years ago about what would happen in case of a pandemic. And that was part of the continuity of operations that drives some of the contingency plans that are in place. I want to make one comment, which is there is no way that technology will replace 3 people standing around brainstorming in front of a whiteboard and that free flow of information. There are some ways that technology can lower some of those barriers and things, whether it's just a Skype call to get some of that nonverbal communication, or what can be done inside of Communicator, and what can be done with that. So we've implemented some things. We're trying to drive out what can be done with Communicator. We've opened VPN back up. What's being done with ORNL access, I realized that had a lot of rough things around the corners when we first rolled that out after last April, and we've continued to improve that, and we're continuing to improve that. From our perspective, we are trying to drive this, really recognizing 2 things. One is that we collaborate a lot with people outside of the laboratory, particularly from a scientific research perspective. And so enabling the kinds of things for us to collaborate with the University of Oklahoma, just to pick on an institution with which I have no connection whatsoever, or some of the same things that we need to do to enable this same kind of telework for those aspects of scientific research that are not intimately tied in with equipment, and help people to focus on doing the stuff while they are physically here that can only be done while they are physically here, and to make it much less transparent. Now, in the mobile work that we're doing in remote access, I've defined remote access as I'm not in my office at the lab. I may be down on Main Street. I may be trying to work from here. What is it that we can enable, and what are those relatively few things that data can't be moved? And if the data can't be moved, can we still let you get at it via appropriate remote control so that the data stays here? And that's one of the things that ORNL Access lets us do, but you're still able to work with it as much as we can, regardless of where you are and what device you're coming in from. That's the goal. Now the question is, how well are we able to execute on it?
I guess the last thing to say is that we need some people to sign up and see how it works. Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, we do. We have a SharePoint site that Barry has put together that has some training materials, and then Sheila Moore is working on a website that will have some videos and testimonials and some other training materials. Hopefully, people can be kind of driven to go look at those. I also think along the way we need to have more of these kind of events, and people are having successful experiences, get some testimonials. I actually heard one from Bruce a couple months ago when we first met. So he's wearing 2 hats here today. And often it's kind of fear of the unknown.
So I have managed people, not here, who telecommute. My short answer to your question is, for some bosses, there ain't nothing you can do about it. But the single biggest way to convince people is for them to see examples of things that they relate to where this actually works. This does take changes in behavior on both the part of the employee and the part of the supervisor. It does require a greater degree of intentionality about the communication, doing things like scheduling one-on-one times, preferably by video conference if that's a day, if a person is 100% telecommuter, or scheduling that for days when the person is in the office, which is where having a defined schedule actually works out. Taking into account little things like talking into the microphone or talking into the phone when you've got remote people participating in a meeting like this. Putting numbers on the slides when you're putting them up in a WebEx or in a live meeting where you've shared things so people can refer back to it. And it's a bunch of stuff that's maybe not obvious if you're just looking at it on the front end, but if you actually understand what the best practices are and show some examples where this works, it can work, it can be beneficial, but it's not one size fits necessarily even most.
I would encourage people to, look at the policy, understand it, talk to their HR manager if they don't know that person. You can talk it out and understand. The HR manager may be able to give the manager's perspective, or could serve as an employee advocate to try to get some traction behind, maybe this is a reasonable request and what can we do? Maybe it's being really clear about those performance expectations so that the manager feels more comfortable with it. So there are ways around that. I just think it takes communication and it's going to take time because it's a little bit of a culture change and to get that traction. And you're a success of the pilot. And right. Yeah.
Maybe we should start a telemanager award program or something every year, recognizing. And I'm very happy and pleased. Keith Call has just recently approved Sheila Moore's application to telework. So let's give them a hand as an award, as a recognition for that. So I hope this has been helpful for you, informative. You'll go out and kind of disperse some of this information. You can come back to the Sustainable Campus site and find this presentation and some additional materials. Please give us feedback as to what more we could do to help promote this because we hope it's here to stay. Thank you so much, and thank my panelists. That's what I'm sitting here thinking. Yeah.
September?
Yes.